So using native plants in your home landscape. And feel free, we're a small group, so if there's a question, yeah, I don't know if you can raise your hand or just feel free to chime in. Okay, so this is from my perspective as a landscape architect, and plants are just one of the artistic mediums that I work with. I do grading and drainage plans, so earth movement is a medium for me. I work with stone for retaining walls, patios, veneer, landscape edging, concrete, wood for decks and whatnot, combinations of materials. I also do planting plans and lighting plans. So anyway, so natives are integral to all of that. And I kind of have a broad a big view. I'm sorry, I haven't been talking all day. I should have been talking before I started this. So I have like a broad perspective when I'm looking at natives. I'm not looking at them like as a scientist would look at them. I'm looking at as a building block in the big picture. That's what I'm trying to say. Okay. So what is a native plant? It's a plant that occurred naturally in a region or ecosystem without human introduction. Yeah, and there could be a big discussion here, but that's what we're going to use today. Let's see. So why use native plants? And I'm going to share a few reasons, and if I'm missing one, there's lots of reasons. Please chime in. So one of the main reasons to use native plants is for wildlife. People want to attract bees, butterflies, birds, reptiles, amphibians, mammals, and natives are a good source of food, shelter, and other purposes. Another reason to use native plants is that they are better adapted to soils, your local soil, moisture, weather. If you're using exotics, you might have to use a whole lot more fertilizer, pesticides, and sometimes a whole lot more water. Native plants help to restore soil health, reduce erosion, improve water quality, and established native areas, they help to impede invasive plants that can really take over and upset the balance of nature. There was this one note I saw, and this was in Gardenia, that according to the U.S. Forest Service, invasive species have contributed to the decline of 42% of U.S. endangered and threatened plant species. And for 18% of the U.S. endangered or threatened species, invasive species compete directly with the invasive species compete directly with the native species for moisture, sunlight, nutrients, and all of that. Yeah, so that's definitely a consideration. And this is my favorite one. Well, that native landscapes are much easier to maintain, and they do enhance the ecosystem. That's a great reason to do natives. So let's see, and I have some slides here. Okay, now why is that not advancing? Oh, there we go. Okay, it doesn't want to go that way. Okay, sorry. Shock. I don't know why my arrow thing isn't working. There we go. That, I guess it wants me to click. So this is Mount St. Helens. I'm going to use quite a few photos from Mount St. Helens garden. That's a native garden I help maintain there. So in the winter time when we're working in the garden, and so we leave the leaves on the ground, and we're always careful where we step because there's little critters like this, and this is the long-toed salamander, and we are pretty excited to find this guy. Yeah, habitat. Let's see here. Now it wants me to do this. Okay, this is me working at Mount St. Helens. That was kind of near the beginning when we started the garden, and that was just I think it was like 2 years later on the right. So native plants, they do take a while to get established. sometimes a little bit longer than regular plants, just because they're working on their roots in the beginning. First couple of years, it's all about the roots, and then you start to get the top growth. This is in the fall time of the same garden. And this is in the winter time. That was not this winter, but the year before. We planted some little tiny baby grasses. And there's Pam working in the garden. And at this time, I was encouraging the group that I work with that we need some more evergreen plants, because you can see at that time it was pretty sparse. In the summer, you saw the picture, it's pretty lush, but anyway. Another consideration for native plants is a lot of them are much more deer resistant than other plants, but that's not a given. So this is our native garden with our native deer enjoying the garden. And you can see on the left that that was a strawberry. She was especially enjoying the strawberry. Okay, how to add native plants to your garden. So let's talk about this. So does anybody have anything you want to add as far as ways to why you like to use natives? Anybody have anything in the comments? I think Gary has it so that, I don't know, maybe everybody's turned off, but I like to
get any comments about people wanting. So maybe let's just have people speak up.
Yeah, because I feel like I'm talking to myself.
Somebody said low maintenance, not too much to eat. Agree with your reasons.
Yeah. Okay. Then we will go on. So how to add native plants to your garden. And this is a series of photos that are actually I took the last couple of days. And so I have in this picture, you can see there's a part of a hosta leaf, and there's some yeah, they are heliobores. It's the Pacific frost, the variegated heliobore. And then there's some bunchberries, some native dogwood. And the dogwood is the native, and I just I mix in a lot of natives with my regular plants. And now these are all natives. This is just on my property. So I would say the biggest thing when you want to add natives to your garden, there's the different whys, but it has to be a purpose on why you add natives. So for my property in particular, it's a woodland property, and around my house, I have some non-natives directly around my house, and my property is a little over 2 acres. So, but on the outer areas, they're all natives, and I pretty much I pull anything that's not a native, I pull it out as time allows, and I just let the natives flourish. When we first came here, the previous owner, her idea of a tidy landscape is she let the trees and the ferns live, and that was about it. And she just cut everything. There's this like clear cut, just cut right down to the ground. And she just wanted it really neat and tidy. So I've just kind of let things grow, and whatever comes up. If it's not native, I pull it out, and it's much easier maintenance that way. And so here we've got some vanilla leaf, and it smells so good. Those are the plants I was talking about, Jane. And it's related to the Oregon grape. And you can see some Western sword fern and some inside out flower in that picture. Here we've got some, the little bit of a 5-finger fern, and it looks like some columbine in there, and some myanthemum ferns. Okay, so I took this by the river yesterday. You can see the columbine is blooming, and the roses are starting to bloom on the lower right in the first picture. And then you can see a blow up of some roses. And so I don't plant any roses on my property, but when I want roses in the summertime, I can just walk down by the river and just pick some roses, because they're always there. Nature just planted them. Super, super easy. I love it. And then there's a kind of a scraggly tree you see, and that's a Philadelphus Louisii. I don't know, the one that you often see in gardens, they call it, I think, mock orange, but it has wonderful fragrance and it's gorgeous. And the buds are just ready to burst, but they're not open yet. So, and this is, there's on the right is a lot of the Myanthemum. You can see some Oregon grape, ferns. This is just what's growing on my property. And again, if I see weeds, I pull them out. Weeds to me is a non-native. And then on the left, it's just walking down the river. You see salal, you see not the evergreen huckleberry, but the it's called red huckleberry. Yeah. Vaccinium parvifolium. Yeah, mixes of wild plants, native plants. And then this is a baby a Western red cedar just popping up, and I'll let it grow there for a while. And if I don't like the location, I just dig it up and I plant it where I want it. Or I give it to a friend or something like that. So I kind of will rearrange the natives a little bit. But I'm really sensitive about where they grow. So going back to, so how do you put natives in your own landscape? Yeah, so you look at the location, first of all. It needs to grow there. So a lot of the plants I'm going to show are more woodland plants. And if you have a hot, sunny site, I really recommend you go to Mount St. Helens. And I am going to show some plants at the end at Mount St. Helens that work well in sunny sites. But you kind of want to look around and see what's already growing and doing well and kind of match that. It's like I had some erosion issues down by the river, and I was looking to see, well, what's doing well, and what's doing the best to help keep the bank not erode. And it was salal. So I nurtured the salal and, kind of pulled some other things out a little bit to give the salal more space. And then I added some salal. Yeah, that's a good way to approach it. Here's some columbine. And then there's the red huckleberry growing out of a stump that I just let grow. Yeah, inside out flower, a lot of that is blooming all over the place now, and you can see some salal in there. And then there's some thimbleberry. I get that all over. And then this is just, one of my husband's sculptures, or a couple of them, and there's just natives all around there. I just, let the natives go. And in front of the mama and the baby, this spring I had this beautiful group of native irises. I should have taken a picture of that. Anyway, and then this was a California project, which is partially native and partially not native, just kind of mixing them together, but it just kind of helps it to blend in with the landscape beyond. Okay, and now we're going to get into some specific natives for consideration, but I wanted to talk about incorporating natives in your own space. So observe nature and copy it. That's probably my number one point is, and if you're on, say you've got a city lot that's just completely disturbed and, there's like nothing, then you would go to like Mount St. Helens or other native gardens, or look at lists, and we'll talk about resources a little bit at the end to see, what might naturally have occurred there. And just, you start building your own ecosystem. And I would start large and go small. I think more in trees and shrubs. And that way, once you get certain trees and shrubs going, just kind of naturally, I don't know if it's completely disturbed, if things will kind of move in, but you create the environment for the smaller plants. Let's see. And you want to be sure to choose, when you are picking natives, you want to choose plants that are going to stay in scale to the size of your yard. Yeah, and sometimes it's okay to, plant a Douglas fir in the backyard, and you're going to cut it down, or maybe you see plant 3, but you're going to cut 2 of them down and only let 1 grow over time. That's another way to think about it. Yeah, you really want to consider your site conditions, how much light, your soil, rainfall, drainage. You really want to do your homework first before you just go out and start buying natives. You want to use a mix of plant, and it all depends on what your goals are. I'm like, I have notes here about, so you have something going on in the 4 seasons, which is really important. Layering, again, you want big to small. And sometimes you want to use natives for problem solvers. It's like when I had some erosion on my bank, and automatically I think natives first, what's going to do the trick. And then I have a note here. It's really important before we start putting plants in the ground, no matter what they are, we should always make sure they're not invasive. Because, as I read that little thing there, from the US Forest Service, that non-natives can really drive out your native plants. So just make sure you're not planting anything invasive. And Cowlitz County has a noxious weed control board. And if you go on the Cowlitz County website, you can find this. And Gary talks about it in the Master Gardener class too. It's covered. It's just really important that we are not planting invasive plants. Yeah, an easy way to add natives to your yard is, say you've got a perennial border. You could, if you've got a spot, or maybe you want to remove something that's getting a little aggressive, you could replace it with a native with a perennial border. The Henderson's checker mallow is one of my new favorites. Yeah, any questions about how to incorporate plants before I go on to some specific natives? If there are, Gary, just chime in. So these are mostly pictures from Mount St. Helens, just because I have the name tags, which is really easy. The deer ferns are awesome. Again, you want a shady woodland sort of site. They cannot handle full sun. The woodland strawberry is beautiful, and we get lots of fruit on that. There's the Douglas aster, which gets very big. You need a good space for that. And in our garden, it tends to flop over too. So I don't know if it would in other sites. And then there's always thimbleberry. Let's see here. And then there's columbine, which is just lovely. And again, you want to have the right environment. It's like, I never see the columbine up on my hill, but I always see the columbine just really happy down by the river. And here's some Indian plum, and I see that all over my property. That's a pretty easy one if somebody wanted a small tree. Here's some lupine, just getting ready to blossom. I bet it's in full blossom right now. Arctostaphylos. Kinnikinnick is a good ground cover if you want to smother weeds and, keep weeds down and not have to water. It's easy. And this is Myanthemum, which just smells so wonderful. And it just dies down to the ground. And there's several different native Myanthemums. Gaultheria, the salal. A lot of you are familiar with that. The bunchberry, the Cornus canadensis, it wants a nice shady spot, and it has beautiful fall color. I like dogwoods are one of my favorites. Pearly everlasting. This is a little aggressive at Mount St. Helens, and we have to keep it in check, but it is pretty. It just pops up all over on my property. It's pretty easy, and yeah. And these are large fairy bells, large flower fairy bells. And then here's the Henderson's checker mallow when it's just starting to come out in April. And here it is. I think I took that one in July, and it smells so good. And it's so pretty. You have all the different leaves there. Now that is a full sun plant for people who have full sun properties. Yeah, and this is from Scott and Dixie Edwards. So the Mount St. Helens garden that I work at, they provided most of the plants there for free. That's their contribution so that they can go and collect seeds later. And this is just a portion of their availability lists. You can stop by their garden, or I'm not sure if their list is online. I have it emailed to me. At the end of we're going to be getting to resources, and I can add their availability list to the end of the slide, the end of the program, so that you can access it later. Okay, no, that one's not working again. Okay. That's so weird. Okay, resources. Oh my goodness. Resources are endless. So when I'm doing native gardens, well, there's a list. When I'm working on my own property, there's a list of native plants for Cowlitz County, and I can attach that to a list of resources. There's a Pacific Northwest Native Plants website. And then I have a book of Pojar and McKinnon, which is plants of the Pacific Northwest coast, which is kind of my little Bible that's all marked up. Yeah, and Scott and Dixie Watershed Gardens is a good source. There's lots of sources.